On an ordinary morning in the bustling city, something didn't feel right. A quiet subway ride turned into a moment of truth when a little girl's silent cry for help caught the attention of a watchful hero. What happened next will leave you speechless. Watch the story unfold and see how one decision can change everything. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support more incredible stories like this. Dwayne Johnson descended the subway stairs in the early hours of the morning, his towering frame and confident stride commanding attention in the otherwise empty station. He had just finished a brief break from his demanding schedule and was heading back to work, his mind occupied with the tasks ahead. The platform was nearly deserted, with only a few commuters scattered around, their heads buried in their phones or absorbed in their thoughts. Among them, Dwayne's eyes caught an unusual sight: a man in a denim jacket standing stiffly with a young girl by his side. The girl, dressed in a brightly colored school uniform and carrying a backpack almost too large for her small frame, seemed out of place. Her posture was tense, her wide eyes darting around nervously. The man's hand rested firmly on her shoulder, his grip too tight to be comforting. Dwayne's instincts, honed from years of working under high-pressure situations, immediately picked up on the oddity of the scene. Something felt wrong, though he couldn't put his finger on it just yet. He decided to keep an eye on them without being obvious. Offering a friendly smile, he approached and greeted them with a casual, "Good morning." The man looked startled but quickly recovered, replying with a forced smile, "Good morning. Just taking my daughter to school." Dwayne nodded, though his instincts told him something about the man's tone felt rehearsed. He walked over to a vending machine, grabbing a can of coffee, but kept them within his line of sight. As he popped open the can, a sudden commotion caught his attention. The girl had slipped out of the man's grip and darted toward Dwayne, clutching his arm tightly. Her small voice trembled as she whispered, "Help me." Before Dwayne could react, the man hurried over, pulling the girl back with a strained smile. "She's just a bit nervous about her first day," he said, his voice tight. The girl's eyes brimmed with tears as she reluctantly followed him back to the platform. Dwayne watched them carefully, feeling a growing unease. He tried to convince himself it could be nerves on the girl's part, but her expression of fear lingered in his mind. When the train arrived, Dwayne boarded a different car, but positioned himself where he could still observe the pair through the glass doors. The girl sat stiffly next to the man, her small hands clutching the straps of her backpack. Occasionally, she would try to edge away, but the man's hand would clamp down on her arm, pulling her back. The tension between them was palpable, and Dwayne's unease grew stronger. As the train sped through the underground tunnels, Dwayne tried to focus on his phone, scrolling through messages, but his mind kept returning to the girl. Suddenly, he heard a faint, desperate voice, so soft he almost missed it. "Stop. Please." It was the girl. Her voice was barely audible over the sound of the train, but it was enough to make Dwayne snap to attention. His instincts fully engaged, Dwayne decided to move closer. Under the guise of needing a quieter seat, he entered their car and sat a few rows behind them. Observing them from this new angle, he noticed the man's grip tightening on the girl's leg whenever she tried to move. The girl's expression was a mix of fear and resignation, and the man's demeanor shifted between forced friendliness and thinly veiled irritation. Dwayne knew he couldn't ignore this any longer. Clearing his throat loudly to make his presence known, he asked, "Everything okay here?" The man turned, his face tense but composed. "Yes, everything's fine. My daughter's just a little fidgety this morning." The girl looked down, avoiding Dwayne's gaze, but he caught a glimpse of her trembling hands. Trying a different tactic, Dwayne picked up a discarded newspaper and moved closer, pretending to read it. This allowed him to get a better look at the girl without alerting the man. What he saw confirmed his suspicions. The girl's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed with unshed tears. Dwayne's chest tightened with anger and concern. As the train approached the next station, Dwayne weighed his options. If he was wrong, and this was a misunderstanding, confronting the man could lead to unnecessary chaos. But if he was right, and this girl was in danger, every second counted. His thoughts were interrupted when the girl looked up, her eyes meeting his. In that brief moment, she raised her hand, her fingers forming a silent but unmistakable distress signal. Dwayne's heart raced. This was no misunderstanding. He had seen enough. As the train doors began to close, Dwayne made his decision. In one swift motion, he stepped off the train and onto the platform, determined to follow them and uncover the truth. Dwayne stepped off the train just as the doors closed behind him, his eyes fixed on the man and the girl walking briskly toward the station exit. He maintained a careful distance, blending in with the morning commuters as he followed them. His heart pounded with adrenaline, his mind racing as he analyzed every detail: the man's hurried steps, his grip on the girl's hand, the way she occasionally glanced back with fear in her eyes. Dwayne had no doubt now that something was deeply wrong, and he needed to act quickly. He pulled out his phone and called 911, his voice calm but urgent as he reported the situation. "This is Dwayne Johnson. I'm at the 32nd Street subway station. I believe I've witnessed an attempted child abduction. The suspect is a man approximately 5'10", medium build, wearing a denim jacket. The child is a blonde girl around 6 or 7 years old, wearing a colorful school uniform. They're heading toward the exit now." The dispatcher assured him that officers were on their way and instructed him to stay on the line if possible. Dwayne agreed, but kept the phone discreetly at his side as he continued to follow the pair. The man led the girl out of the station and onto the bustling city streets. The morning rush was in full swing, providing both cover and challenges for Dwayne as he navigated through the crowd. The man's grip on the girl's hand was firm, his eyes darting nervously around as if he sensed he was being watched. The girl stumbled slightly, her small frame struggling to keep up with his pace, but he didn't slow down. Dwayne's jaw clenched as he resisted the urge to confront the man immediately. He knew he needed to gather more information and wait for the right moment to intervene. After several blocks, the man and the girl reached a school building. The bright sign above the entrance identified it as Westfield Elementary. Dwayne stopped a short distance away, watching as the man walked the girl inside. Something about the scene felt off. The school grounds were nearly empty, too early for the usual arrival of students and staff. He noted the time, 7:10 a.m. Most schools wouldn't be this quiet during drop-off hours. Dwayne's instincts screamed at him that this was far from a normal morning. Positioning himself behind a parked car, Dwayne kept his eyes on the building. Moments later, the man re-emerged alone, his steps brisk as he headed back toward the direction of the subway station. Dwayne debated whether to follow him, but ultimately decided the girl's safety was the priority. He needed to ensure she was out of danger and uncover what was really going on. Approaching the school entrance, Dwayne put on a calm and approachable demeanor. The receptionist at the front desk looked up, her smile faltering slightly as she took in his imposing figure. "Good morning," Dwayne said, his voice steady and friendly. "I'm here to check on my niece, Karina. Her mom asked me to make sure she's settled in. Family emergency." The receptionist hesitated, clearly unsure of how to respond. Dwayne's confident tone and genuine concern seemed to reassure her. She nodded and pointed him toward the first-grade classrooms. She'd just arrived with her father, down that hallway. Dwayne thanked her and walked toward the indicated direction, his mind racing as he formulated his next steps. The hallway was quiet, the sound of his footsteps echoing softly. Passing closed classroom doors, he finally reached the playground at the back of the building. There, he spotted the girl huddled in the dome of the monkey bars, her small body curled up tightly as if trying to disappear. Dwayne approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "Karina?" he called softly, kneeling down a few feet away. The girl looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with fear. "It's okay," Dwayne said gently. "My name is Dwayne. I saw your signal on the train. I'm here to help." The girl hesitated, her wide eyes studying him cautiously. After a moment, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's not my dad," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He says he is, but he's lying. My real dad is gone. He's been waiting at the subway for me. He hurts me if I don't say he's my dad." Dwayne's fists clenched at her words, but he kept his expression calm and reassuring. "You're very brave for telling me this, Karina," he said. "I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again." He paused, his voice softening. "Do you know where your mom is?" Karina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "She works early. She drops me at the subway every morning, and I take the train to school by myself." Dwayne felt a pang of sadness at the vulnerability in her voice. "Does your mom know about him?" he asked gently. Karina shook her head. "He said I couldn't tell her. He said she'd be mad at me." Dwayne reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing by telling me," he said firmly. "I promise I won't let him hurt you again." He stood, pulling out his phone and dialing 911 once more. This time, his voice was filled with unwavering determination as he updated the dispatcher. "I have the child with me now. She's confirmed the man isn't her father and has been threatening her. We're at Westfield Elementary. Please send units immediately." As he ended the call, Dwayne turned back to Karina, offering her a warm smile. "Help is on the way," he said. "You're safe now. I won't leave you." He sat beside her on the playground, keeping a watchful eye on the building entrance. In the distance, the faint sound of sirens began to grow louder. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder as Dwayne remained seated beside Karina on the playground. His towering figure, calm yet alert, seemed to bring her a measure of comfort. She sat close to him, clutching the straps of her backpack with trembling hands. The weight of her earlier confession hung heavy in the air, and Dwayne knew that every moment mattered now. He glanced towards the school building entrance, scanning for any sign of the man, but the area remained still apart from the faint rustle of the morning breeze. When the first police car arrived, Dwayne rose to his feet, holding out a hand to Karina. "It's okay," he said gently. "These are the people who are going to help us." The officers stepped out, their expressions serious as they approached. Dwayne raised a hand in a signal of calm. "She's the one," he said, motioning to Karina. "The man is gone, but he brought her here. She confirmed he's not her father and has been threatening her. I think he's been stalking her for weeks." The officers crouched to Karina's level, speaking in soft, reassuring tones as they asked her basic questions. Dwayne stayed close, his presence a protective shield. She answered hesitantly, confirming the man's actions and describing the lies he had told her. Every word she spoke made Dwayne's blood boil, but he kept his emotions in check. His focus was on keeping her calm and safe. More officers arrived within minutes, the scene becoming a controlled hub of activity. The lead officer, a tall woman with a commanding presence, approached Dwayne. "Mr. Johnson, I understand you're the one who reported this?" she asked. Dwayne nodded. "That's right. I saw them on the subway this morning. The way he was holding her and her behavior, it didn't feel right. She gave me a distress signal, so I followed them here. I wasn't going to leave until I knew she was safe." The officer's eyes softened slightly as she nodded in acknowledgement. "We're going to need a full statement from you. But first, we need to secure the school and track down the suspect. Do you know where he went after dropping her off?" Dwayne gestured toward the direction of the subway station. "He headed back that way. I can give you a description. He's about 5'10", medium build, denim jacket. His demeanor was nervous but controlled." The officer relayed the information to her team, who quickly coordinated a search. Meanwhile, the school administration was informed, and a lockdown was quietly implemented to ensure no unauthorized individuals could enter or leave. Teachers were instructed to keep students in their classrooms while the police swept the building for any signs of the man. Dwayne stayed with Karina, who had been escorted inside to the principal's office. The small room was filled with concerned staff and officers as they worked to gather details and secure her safety. Karina's teacher, Miss Casey, arrived shortly after, her face pale with concern. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Dwayne took a step forward, his tone calm but firm. "Karina's been in danger. The man who brought her here isn't her father. He's been threatening her and trying to take her away. She told me everything." Miss Casey's eyes widened in shock, and she turned to Karina, who nodded hesitantly. "Oh, sweetheart," Miss Casey murmured, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." The officers briefed Miss Casey on the situation while Dwayne knelt beside Karina again. "You're doing great," he said softly. "I know this is scary, but you're not alone anymore. We're going to take care of this." She nodded, her small hands gripping the edge of her chair. As the investigation unfolded, Dwayne felt a deep sense of responsibility. He had intervened just in time, but the thought of how close this had come to ending differently weighed heavily on him. He glanced at Karina, who was finally beginning to relax in the presence of the supportive adults around her. The officer returned, her expression serious. "We've got teams at the subway station and the surrounding area. If he's still nearby, we'll find him. For now, we need to focus on Karina's immediate safety." Dwayne turned to Miss Casey. "Does her mother know what's happening?" The teacher shook her head. "Not yet. We've been trying to reach her, but she's likely at work. She usually can't answer her phone during the day." Dwayne nodded. "We need to get her here as soon as possible. Karina needs her mom." The lead officer agreed and had a team focus on locating Karina's mother. In the meantime, they gathered further details from Karina about the man. Her descriptions painted a chilling picture of a calculated predator who had been observing her routines and exploiting her vulnerability as a young girl traveling alone in the early morning hours. The room was a flurry of quiet yet purposeful activity as the officers coordinated their efforts. Dwayne remained by Karina's side, his presence a source of comfort for the frightened girl. As the minutes ticked by, he couldn't help but reflect on the events of the morning. His decision to follow his instincts had been the turning point. He had seen the signs, acted decisively, and ensured that Karina was no longer at the mercy of someone who sought to harm her. When an officer finally announced that Karina's mother had been reached and was on her way, Dwayne felt a wave of relief. He leaned down to Karina, giving her a reassuring smile. "Your mom's coming," he said softly. Her face lit up with a mix of relief and anticipation. "She's going to be so happy to see you safe." As they waited, Dwayne glanced at the officers in the room, feeling a deep respect for their professionalism and determination. This wasn't the kind of heroism he was used to portraying on screen, but it felt more real and meaningful than anything he had ever done in front of a camera. For Karina, he wasn't just a celebrity. He was the person who had seen her distress and acted when it mattered most. He knew that whatever came next, he had already made a lasting difference in her life. As the sound of police sirens faded into the background, Dwayne watched the flurry of activity around the school. Officers coordinated with school staff, locking down entrances and ensuring the safety of students, while others prepared to track the suspect who had fled toward the subway station. Dwayne stayed close to Karina, who clung to him for reassurance. The waiting was tense, but he knew the priority now was ensuring she remained calm and safe. The lead detective approached Dwayne, her face marked by focus and urgency. "Mr. Johnson, we're mobilizing officers to cover all exits from the station. Based on your description and Karina's statements, we believe he's a repeat offender. He's calculated, so he'll try to blend in or escape quickly. We'd like you to come with us to the station. Your first-hand account could help us identify him if he's still in the area." Dwayne nodded without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes to stop this guy." He knelt beside Karina one last time before leaving. "I need to help the police catch the bad man," he explained softly. "But you're safe here. These officers and your teacher will take good care of you until your mom gets here. I promise I'll come back to check on you." Karina looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "You won't let him take me, right?" she asked in a trembling voice. Dwayne placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I won't let him near you ever again. You're safe now, I promise." She nodded hesitantly, and Dwayne gave her a quick but comforting hug before following the detective out of the building. The drive to the subway station was tense. Dwayne sat in the passenger seat of the unmarked police car, his mind racing with thoughts of what could happen if the suspect escaped. He relayed every detail he could remember about the man, his appearance, his behavior, even the way he had spoken to Karina. The detective listened attentively, nodding as she took notes. "Your quick thinking this morning gave us a solid lead," she said. "If we catch him today, it'll be thanks to you." When they arrived at the subway station, the scene was chaotic. Morning commuters moved in every direction, oblivious to the unfolding investigation. Officers were stationed at every exit, scanning the crowd for anyone matching the suspect's description. Dwayne joined the lead detective and a small team as they made their way onto the platform where he had first seen the man. His eyes darted across the sea of faces, searching for anything familiar. The noise of the crowd and the screeching of train brakes filled the air, but Dwayne's focus was unwavering. Suddenly, a familiar figure caught his attention, a man with a slightly altered appearance. He had changed his jacket, now wearing a dark hoodie, but his height, build, and demeanor were unmistakable. The man was standing near the edge of the platform trying to engage a young girl in conversation. Dwayne's pulse quickened. He gestured discreetly to the officers. "That's him," he said, his voice firm but quiet. The lead detective nodded, signaling her team to move into position. Dwayne's large frame made it difficult to remain inconspicuous, but he stayed back, ready to intervene if the man tried to flee. As the officers closed in, the man noticed them and panicked. He grabbed the girl's arm and tried to pull her toward the train doors. Dwayne reacted instinctively, stepping forward and cutting him off. His commanding presence froze the man in his tracks. "Let her go," Dwayne said, his voice steady but full of authority. The man hesitated, his eyes darting between Dwayne and the advancing officers. Before the suspect could react further, the officers surrounded him, pulling the girl to safety and placing him in handcuffs. The man struggled briefly, shouting incoherent excuses, but he was quickly subdued. The lead detective stepped forward, her voice cold and professional. "You're under arrest for attempted abduction and other charges. You have the right to remain silent." As the suspect was led away, Dwayne turned his attention to the young girl, who was trembling with fear. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "You're safe now. The police are here to protect you." The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face as she clutched at Dwayne's arm for comfort. The lead detective approached Dwayne, holding up a wallet retrieved from the suspect. "We found multiple fake IDs," she said grimly. "This guy has been operating under several aliases. It's bigger than we thought. He might be connected to a larger network of child trafficking." Dwayne's expression hardened. "We need to stop this," he said, "not just for Karina, but for every kid he's targeted." The detective nodded. "Your actions today didn't just save one child. You may have helped us crack open a much bigger case. We'll need a full statement from you back at the station." Dwayne agreed, but his thoughts were already turning back to Karina. "I promised the girl I'd check on her and her mom. I'll give my statement right after that." The detective smiled faintly. "Take your time. You've done more than enough today." As Dwayne prepared to leave the station, the weight of the morning's events settled over him. He had acted on instinct, but the consequences of his actions were far-reaching. He had stopped a predator and possibly disrupted an entire operation. But his focus remained on Karina, on ensuring that she and her mother could begin to heal after this nightmare. Heading back to the school, Dwayne felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just a bystander. Today, he had made a real difference, and he wasn't done yet. There were still promises to keep and lives to protect. Dwayne returned to the school just as Karina's mother arrived. The scene in the office was emotional, with Karina running into her mother's arms, her small body trembling as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her mother, a petite woman with tired eyes and disheveled hair, clutched her daughter tightly, her face pale with shock. Dwayne paused at the doorway, allowing them a moment of privacy while the officers and school staff stood back, watching silently. After a few moments, Karina's mother, Jocelyn, looked up, her eyes red and filled with gratitude. "You're the man who saved her?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dwayne nodded, stepping forward. "I'm Dwayne Johnson. I was on the train this morning and noticed something wasn't right. Karina gave me the distress signal. I knew I couldn't ignore it." Jocelyn broke down into tears again, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. I can't even imagine what could have happened if you hadn't been there. I thought I was doing the right thing, letting her take the train. I didn't know." Dwayne placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not at fault. This man was a predator. He knew how to exploit routines and vulnerabilities. What matters now is that Karina is safe, and we've stopped him from hurting anyone else." Jocelyn nodded, though the guilt lingered in her expression. She turned to Karina, who was clinging to her tightly. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know. I should have been there for you." Karina looked up at her mother, her tear-streaked face full of emotion. I was scared, Mom. I didn't want to tell you because he said you'd be mad at me." Jocelyn's heart broke visibly as she pulled Karina closer. "Oh, baby, I would never be mad at you. You're so brave for telling someone. I'm just so sorry I wasn't there." Dwayne stood quietly, giving them space but ready to step in if needed. After a few moments, Miss Casey, Karina's teacher, approached with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Peterson, I just want you to know we're here to support you and Karina. We've already spoken with the police about implementing additional safety measures for students who arrive early." Jocelyn nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this never happens again." Miss Casey looked at Dwayne. "And Mr. Johnson, thank you. Without your quick thinking, I don't even want to imagine what could have happened. You truly are a hero." Dwayne shook his head modestly. "I just did what anyone should do. Karina is a real hero here. She had the courage to ask for help." Karina looked up at him, her blue eyes wide. "You're a hero, too," she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "You made sure he didn't take me." Dwayne crouched down to her level, giving her a warm smile. "And you made sure I knew something was wrong. That was brave, Karina. That's what heroes do. They don't give up, no matter how scared they are." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of the lead detective, who approached with a clipboard. "Mrs. Peterson, we'll need a formal statement from you when you're ready. Mr. Johnson, we'll also need you to come to the station later today to finalize your report." Jocelyn nodded, her grip on Karina tightening protectively. "Of course. I'll do whatever you need." The detective looked to Dwayne. "The suspect is in custody, and we're uncovering more details about his activities. It seems he's been targeting children for a while, using fake identities and watching their routines. Thanks to your intervention, we might be able to connect him to other cases and bring justice for those families too." Dwayne's expression hardened, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "Let me know if there's anything else I can do," he said. "I want to make sure this stops here." The detective nodded. "We'll be in touch. For now, take some time. You've earned it." As the detective left, Jocelyn turned back to Dwayne. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice still shaky. "You've given us a second chance. Please, let us do something to show our gratitude." Dwayne hesitated, then nodded. "I'd be honored to join you for dinner, but right now the best thing you can do is focus on Karina. She needs you more than ever." Jocelyn smiled through her tears. "Thank you, really." Dwayne gave Karina a gentle pat on the shoulder. "You're going to be okay, kiddo. Just remember to always tell the truth and trust the people who care about you." Karina nodded, her small hand gripping his. "Will you come for dinner tomorrow?" she asked hopefully. Dwayne chuckled softly. "I wouldn't miss it." As he prepared to leave, he glanced back at the mother and daughter embracing tightly. Despite the morning's chaos and fear, this moment was filled with relief and hope. Dwayne felt a profound sense of purpose. He had done what he could to protect Karina, but he knew his job wasn't finished yet. There was still a full statement to give and more to learn about the man who had tried to take her. For now, though, he could leave knowing that she was safe, surrounded by love, and on the road to healing. The next morning, Dwayne arrived at the police station to provide his final statement. The atmosphere was tense yet focused, with officers reviewing reports and coordinating efforts to investigate the suspect's connections to other cases. Dwayne was greeted by the lead detective, who escorted him to an interview room where he recounted the events of the previous day in detail. He described the suspect's behavior, Karina's distress signal, and his decision to follow them to the school. His account was precise, every detail provided with the clarity of someone determined to ensure justice was served. The detective nodded as she listened, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Your actions yesterday didn't just save Karina," she said when Dwayne finished. "The evidence we've gathered so far indicates this man was part of a larger operation targeting vulnerable children. Your intervention has given us a significant lead in dismantling it." Dwayne's expression remained serious as he processed the weight of her words. "What's the next step?" he asked. "We'll be coordinating with other jurisdictions to investigate his connections," the detective explained. "For now, we have him in custody, and he won't be able to harm anyone else. Your testimony will be crucial when this goes to trial." Satisfied that he had done everything in his power to assist the investigation, Dwayne left the station and made his way back to his schedule for the day. However, his thoughts remained with Karina and her mother. The events of the previous day had left an indelible mark on him, reinforcing the importance of trusting his instincts and taking action when it mattered most. Later that evening, Dwayne arrived at Jocelyn and Karina's modest apartment for the dinner he had promised to attend. The apartment was small, but warm and welcoming, filled with the comforting smells of home-cooked food. Karina greeted him at the door, her face lighting up with excitement. "You came!" she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around his waist in a tight hug. "Of course I did," Dwayne said with a smile. "I couldn't miss dinner with my new friend." Jocelyn appeared behind her daughter, looking more relaxed than the day before. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "It means a lot to us." They sat together at the table, sharing a meal and talking about everything except the events that had brought them together. Jocelyn spoke about her work, her struggles as a single mother, and her hopes for Karina's future. Karina, meanwhile, showed Dwayne her favorite drawings and proudly told him about her favorite books and movies. For a few hours, the weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by laughter and connection. As the evening wound down, Jocelyn turned to Dwayne with a serious expression. "I don't know how to thank you enough for what you did. You gave us more than just safety. You gave us hope. If there's ever anything we can do for you, please let us know." Dwayne shook his head. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Seeing Karina safe and happy is all the thanks I need. But if you ever need anything, you know how to reach me." Karina looked up at him with wide, admiring eyes. "Will you visit us again?" she asked softly. Dwayne smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You bet. And next time maybe we'll do something fun, like drawing or watching a movie. Deal?" Karina nodded eagerly. "Deal!" As Dwayne left the apartment that night, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The day before, he had been just another commuter on the subway, but his decision to act had changed the course of a little girl's life. It wasn't the kind of heroism he was used to portraying on screen. It was something deeper, more personal, and infinitely more rewarding. Walking back to his car, Dwayne glanced up at the night sky, the weight of the day lifting as he thought about the bond he had formed with Karina and Jocelyn. The world was full of challenges and dangers, but it was also full of opportunities to make a difference. Dwayne knew he couldn't save everyone, but for Karina and her mother, he had made all the difference. That was enough. And so, a single act of courage and compassion made all the difference. Moments like these remind us that heroes can be found anywhere, as long as we're willing to act. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible content.